The moment I spotted the tents sprawled across my south pasture, I knew something insane was about to unfold. You expect to find deer grazing or maybe a few wayward cattle, not a full-blown neighborhood camping trip complete with barbecues, boom boxes, and a shrieking woman waving a clipboard like a battle flag. At first, I thought maybe a group of lost hikers had stumbled onto my land, but then I saw the banners. Handwritten signs flapping in the wind proudly announced, HOA Annual Retreat, like they had rented a conference center instead of trespassing onto a working ranch. Before I could even park my ATV and swing a leg off, a woman stomped toward me, hands on her hips, with the righteous fury of a queen defending her kingdom. Her bright pink sun visor and massive sunglasses did nothing to soften the venom in her voice as she barked, "You are not authorized to be here, sir. This is a reserved area for HOA members only." I blinked, stunned, thinking she must be joking. I owned every square inch of this land. Before I could open my mouth to explain, she whipped out her cell phone and started shrieking into it about a dangerous man threatening peaceful families at their community event. Within seconds, she was dialing 911, describing me like I was an armed intruder instead of the landowner. That was the exact moment I knew this was not going to be an ordinary Saturday. I stayed mounted on my ATV, watching her parade up and down the field like she was leading an army. Behind her, families were setting up folding chairs and inflatable kiddie pools right next to my hay barn. Some kids were even poking sticks at my livestock fence, giggling as the cows nervously backed away. I had spent years building this ranch from nothing, pouring sweat into every fence post, every irrigation line, every blade of grass. To see it treated like a public park buffet made my blood simmer. But I kept my temper in check, because I knew how these situations went. You yell once and suddenly you are the bad guy, even when it is your name on the deed. Karen, as I had already mentally named the visor woman, strutted back over to me with her phone still pressed to her ear. "Help is on the way," she snapped, as if she had just saved the world. I asked her as calmly as I could who had given her permission to camp here. She looked at me like I had 3 heads. "The HOA board," she said proudly, as if she had dropped the name of the president himself. "We voted, and this is common land now. It is for the benefit of the neighborhood." I almost laughed, but managed to choke it down. Common land. That would have been hilarious if it were not so insulting. This was private property, 3 miles outside the nearest housing development, and the only commonality about it was that it commonly belonged to me and nobody else. Minutes later, I heard the faint whine of sirens in the distance, getting louder fast. Karen smirked and clapped her hands like she had just summoned an army. "You better get off this land before you get arrested," she chirped. Her followers, emboldened by the approaching sirens, cheered and waved their solo cups in the air like it was a tailgate party. I stayed put, arms crossed, eyes squinting into the sunlight, waiting. I had no intention of running from my own land. If anything, I was curious how deep Karen was willing to dig her own grave. 2 sheriff's vehicles pulled up in a cloud of dust, lights flashing. The deputies stepped out slowly, hands resting lightly on their belts, taking in the chaotic scene of tents, grills, and toddlers chasing chickens through the pasture. Karen sprinted toward them like a sprinter going for Olympic gold. "Officers," she cried dramatically, pointing at me, "that man is harassing us. He is a danger. He is ruining our HOA retreat." I watched the deputies exchange a look, one eyebrow arching higher than the other. The lead deputy, a grizzled man with a weathered face and kind eyes, scanned the area, then his gaze landed squarely on me. His face split into a wide grin. "Well, I will be," he chuckled, "if it isn't the king of the ranch himself. How you doing, buddy?" Karen's jaw hit the dirt. "You know him," she gasped. The deputy laughed and clapped me on the back. "Known him 20 years, he said cheerfully. "This here's his land, ma'am. Has been since before most of y'all even moved out here." Karen stuttered, stammered, then tried to recover by pulling out a stack of papers from her fanny pack. "Our bylaws give us access to natural spaces," she insisted, waving the papers wildly. The deputy took one look and snorted. "Ma'am, HOA rules stop at your property lines. You cannot just annex somebody else's ranch because you want a weekend getaway." Karen's face turned a fascinating shade of red, somewhere between fire engine and ripe tomato. She opened her mouth, probably to launch another barrage of nonsense, but the deputy held up his hand. "I am gonna give you folks a chance to leave peacefully," he said, real firm now. "Pack it up, clear out, no fines, no arrest. But if you stay after being told, it becomes criminal trespass, and we start hauling people off to jail." Karen was trembling with rage, visibly torn between obeying the law and her overwhelming desire to win. Behind her, the campers had started whispering, casting nervous glances at each other. A few were already yanking tent stakes out of the ground and tossing gear back into SUVs. The tide was turning, and Karen knew it. She rounded on me one last time, jabbing a finger in my direction. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You will hear from our lawyers." I smiled, slow and wide. "I sure hope so," I said. "Because I got a few calls to make myself." As Karen stormed off in a spray of dust and wounded pride, I swung back onto my ATV and watched the trespassers scatter like ants. But deep down, I knew it was not over. Not by a long shot. People like Karen never went down without a few more rounds of chaos. And this time, I was ready for whatever storm she wanted to unleash. The dust had barely settled after the last of the trespassers packed up their things when I spotted Karen lingering near the old oak tree by the fence line. While most of the other campers had the good sense to leave quietly, shame-faced and muttering apologies under their breath, Karen stayed planted like a statue, arms crossed, glaring at me like I had personally ruined her dream vacation. I could see her pacing back and forth, furiously punching things into her phone. I was not worried, though. I had the law, the land deeds, and common sense on my side. It was only a matter of time before reality caught up with her delusions. Or so I thought. Less than an hour later, the stillness of the ranch was shattered by the sight of Karen marching up the dirt driveway with a group of people trailing behind her like ducklings. Some of them were carrying clipboards, others were holding what looked suspiciously like printouts of official-looking documents. I leaned against the fence and waited, watching the parade approach with a mix of amusement and disbelief. Karen stopped about 20 feet away, planted her feet wide apart, and held up a sheaf of papers as if she were serving a royal proclamation. "I hereby inform you," she announced loudly enough to startle the crows out of the trees, "that under the newly amended HOA bylaws, this area is now considered an extension of the community green space." She paused, clearly waiting for some kind of reaction. When I simply raised an eyebrow, she pressed on. "Therefore, you are in violation by occupying common property without HOA consent, and you are ordered to vacate immediately." Behind her, a few of her followers nodded vigorously, like they actually believed this nonsense. I crossed my arms and said nothing, giving her just enough rope to hang herself. Karen, thinking she had stunned me into submission, stepped closer and shoved one of the papers toward me. It was a grainy black and white map with a giant hand-drawn circle around my property and the words HOA territory scribbled across it in Sharpie. I almost laughed out loud but managed to keep a straight face. "Ma'am," I said slowly, just so there was no confusion, "you cannot just claim somebody else's land because you feel like it. This is private property. It has always been private property. And your HOA has no jurisdiction outside of your development." Karen's face twisted into something halfway between rage and smugness. "You will regret underestimating us," she hissed. "We have legal resources. You have been warned." With that, she spun on her heel and marched back to her group, barking orders like a general organizing an invasion. I decided it was time to make my next move before things got even more ridiculous. I spent the afternoon documenting everything. I took photos of the damage they had already caused, broken sections of fencing where kids had climbed, deep ruts in the field from vehicles, piles of litter scattered near the pond. I called my lawyer, a no-nonsense rancher's daughter who had been itching for a good case like this for months. After explaining the situation, she laughed and told me not to worry. She would draft a formal cease and desist notice first thing in the morning and have it hand-delivered to Karen herself. I thanked her and hung up feeling confident. Later that evening, just as the sun was slipping behind the hills and casting everything in gold and purple light, I heard shouting again from the south pasture. Curious but cautious, I saddled up my ATV and rolled down the dirt path to see what fresh madness was unfolding. To my amazement, Karen and her crew were erecting new tents, bigger ones this time, along with folding tables and even what looked like a portable stage. Somebody was setting up speakers and running extension cords across the grass, plugged into a portable generator humming away beside one of the trucks. It was not just camping now. It was a full-blown event. I drove up slowly, stopping a good distance away to avoid escalating anything. Karen saw me immediately and stormed over, her visor now replaced with a glittery captain's hat that made her look like the world's angriest cruise director. She thrust a laminated badge into my face that read HOA Event Coordinator and said smugly, "We are not leaving. This is a sanctioned community event. Your presence is no longer required." I stared at her, genuinely amazed at the depths of her delusion. "You were told to leave," I reminded her. "The sheriff told you. The law told you. This is private land. Trespassing is a crime. You really want to escalate this?" Karen's lips curled into a grin that sent a chill down my spine. "I have already filed a restraining order against you," she said sweetly. "You are now legally required to stay 100 yards away from any HOA member during official activities. If you come any closer, I can have you arrested." I blinked, momentarily speechless. It was like arguing with a brick wall that could yell back. A restraining order. Against me. On my own land. That was her master plan. My mind raced, thinking through the implications. I knew it would never hold up in real court, but if the local deputies came back and saw a paper filed with the county clerk, even a bogus one, they would be obligated to act until a judge threw it out. Karen had found a way to weaponize bureaucracy against me, at least temporarily. I clenched my jaw and fought down the urge to tear down every one of their stupid tents myself. That was what she wanted. She was goading me into a mistake. I needed to stay calm and outsmart her. I turned my ATV around slowly and rode back to the ranch house, thinking hard. Karen thought she had won a battle today. She thought she was clever, that she had found a loophole. But what she did not realize was that she had just handed me the biggest legal advantage yet. Because by filing that restraining order, she had officially admitted, on public record, that she knew she was on land she did not own. That meant every tent peg, every lawn chair, every footprint was documented trespass. I parked my ATV by the barn, pulled out my phone, and started making calls. If Karen wanted to play hardball, fine. I would bring the whole toolbox. By the time the sun rose tomorrow, she was going to wish she had packed up her circus and left when she had the chance. This was not just about fences and fields anymore. It was about principle. About standing up for what was rightfully mine. And I was ready to fight smart. Ready to fight with everything I had. Because the ranch was not just my land. It was my life. And I was not about to let some HOA tyrant rewrite history with a laminated badge and a Sharpie map. The next morning I woke up early, well before the first hints of sunlight stretched across the horizon. I could not shake the feeling that today was going to be pivotal. Last night, after everything had settled down, I had gone through every document I could find on my property boundaries, ownership rights, and the local land use code. I even dug up a copy of the original land survey from when my grandfather had bought the ranch decades ago. I needed every piece of proof lined up because I knew Karen was not going to back down easily. She had tasted a little victory with that ridiculous restraining order, and people like her only got more dangerous when they thought they had the upper hand. As I drank my coffee on the porch and watched the mist rolling over the fields, I decided it was time to stop playing defense. It was time to take back my land on my own terms. I called the sheriff's office first thing, explaining the situation carefully. The deputy who answered was sympathetic but